Hello, everybody, on to iteration 7.23 of trying to fix the audio. Uh,
Stardate.
I have a much better indication that this might do it, but we'll find out.
Because we are non-scientific and stupid, of course, we're also introducing another variable, which is me going to a different room in my house and using a USB headset over Wi-Fi. So,
Yep.
sorry, everybody.
Yeah. So today it's actually Paul's fault, but I'll explain here what I'm doing in 1 second once we get through this real quick. Today's show is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out at cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free trial offer that will go away eventually. So do definitely check that out about how to back up all your data to your cloud, and that cloud being whatever cloud you actually want it to be.
Literally.
Yeah. Actually, Raf, well, he didn't, whatever. He's on the payroll. He actually tweeted out a picture non-provoked, and he said here's why I like Cloudberry, and it's quite literally you just pick a cloud, you just click, log in, and then you just back up.
Yeah, did I told you privately, and I think the team privately, Raf's my story about Raf and Cloudberry. It's probably worth repeating here, although I'll take out the expletive, which is that when we started this what do you call it, promotion.
Yep.
Raf contacted me and he said, hey, I see that you guys are doing a thing with Cloudberry. And I was like, oh boy, like, here we go. And because I was thinking he was going to have some kind of a problem. And I said, yeah. And he goes, good. They're awesome. He goes, I actually use this product. I paid for the enterprise version. I rely on it. I love it. And I was like, oh, thank God. But I've actually written a review of the product, which is not live on the site yet, but it will be soon. And yeah, I think that bring your own storage aspect of it is one of a few things that really makes this thing special. It's great.
Yep. Yeah. And what do you? On occasion, Paul will toss some notes into the pre-show roll.
Right.
That throws me for a loop, much like him changing microphones on each episode. Jackass.
But if you're going to do the minimum, I would say if you're going to do anything, you try to be as consistent as possible, but every once in a while I do have a contribution. Yeah.
And what is this? The Xbox 35
Yeah, so I
million?
haven't fully researched this one yet. I'm going to write this up, but I'm going to do it with some more background around how Xbox One sales compare to those of its predecessor, and obviously to the PlayStation 4. There was a recent report about the sales pace of the PlayStation 4 and how amazing that's been going.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that console generation seemingly has peaked as far as the sales per year, sales per month, whatever you want to look at. But this recent report suggests that the Xbox One is closing in on 35 million units sold worldwide, which would put it a little below the 2-to-1 disadvantage that they've had versus the PlayStation 4 overall. But there's some good news in there too, and I think what this data will show, and again, I need to actually do the research, but I think what we're going to see is that it has outsold the Xbox One to the same time frame in its life cycle, which of course is one of the goals.
Yep.
And also, just within the within the video game market, that level of sales is still excellent. I mean, it's hard when you're outsold by 2-to-1, but you might want to compare it to other things like smartphones, for example. I mean, in the United States, obviously, it's kind of 50-50 between Android and I almost said Windows Phone and iPhone. But when you look at the worldwide picture, it's like 85% Android, 15% or less iOS. And, when you have 1/3 of the market almost to yourself, which Xbox does for a home console, that's actually kind of fantastic. I mean, it's still doing really, really well. And the Xbox One X outsold the PlayStation 4 Pro over the holidays and outsold the PlayStation 4 Pro versus its own launch a year ago. So there's actually some good news in there. And now I've ruined my story. Because that's a lot. But I'm gonna back up what I just said with some research.
With some written word. But that's good. I don't think anybody looks at the Xbox and says, hey, that's a failure by any means.
Well, some people do. I mean, and it doesn't help that Microsoft has kind of walked away from hard metrics, in everything. And the Xbox One's tough because right in the beginning, they actually provided sales numbers. And then when Sony's lead kind of hit the 2-to-1 mark, that's when they stopped. And so I think a lot of people look at that and say, that's interesting. But, like I said, 2-to-1, not great, but they're still selling tens of millions of these things.
Yeah, and I'm going to be curious to see if Game Pass has any influence on that. One of the other things we've never really talked about here is, I think last week, Google is apparently working on a game streaming service called Yeti, which I think we can all look at the tea leaves here and look at Game Pass and say, hey, that's kind of Microsoft's streaming platform. They're going to get us in now, and then they'll transition it into that. But this is step one, which is a smart move. So
Yep, I agree.
Other things that happened this week, actually, Mehedi dug this up. He says Microsoft is testing per-app preview programs for Windows 10. So if you're a developer and you're trying to target a specific user group or want to offer private preview betas, that will be coming soon. And I also find this one hilarious. Accordingly, I think this came from Bloomberg. It says the next version of Android will support iPhone X like notches.
Oh, boy.
This is like when you have a scar on your face, Paul, and they say it's a beauty mark.
So over the weekend, and coincidental to this story, because I didn't know anything about this, I went back and I rewatched Apple's announcement about the new iPhones from last fall. I just watched that part of it. It was the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and then the 10. And I did that actually after listening to the Apple quarterly earnings call, right, which occurred last week. I listened to that over the weekend too. In fact, that's what incited me to go back and watch the video. And the reason I did it was Tim Cook said something that I thought was really interesting. He described the iPhone 10 as obviously being this big as the original iPhone, whatever. But he said that in the way that the original iPhone set the stage for the next decade, that the iPhone 10 likewise sets the stage now for the next decade. That's something he said in the conference call. It's also something he said, by the way, on stage when they announced the iPhone 10. And I find that positioning to be very interesting on a number of levels. I mean, obviously there are similarities between the iPhone 8, 8 Plus, and the 10 from, the chipsets and so forth. But you have to kind of look at the technologies that are unique to the 10 to understand what he means. And it's things like Face ID, obviously, over Touch ID, which, a lot of people have a problem with, in the same way that a lot of people had a problem and still do with them getting rid of the headphone jack on the iPhones or whatever. But that kind of leads me to think, I'm thinking a lot about the notch, and I find the notch to be problematic. To me, it was always in the way. I never stopped noticing it. Obviously iPhone 10 users, if you polled them, a bunch of them would say that it just disappears. They don't really see it, but they clearly see this stuff, the augmented reality aspects of the system, the Face ID stuff, the security of that, payments, whatever, as I think the basis for this next decade. And I guess what I'm trying to say in a very long way is I think we're going to be dealing with the notch for a while. I think, and it's so typical of Google to copy something stupid and put it in the Android. And it just, God, it's depressing.
Well, Paul,
I feel
the story writes itself. Next year, it's going to be iPhone X1 or whatever, notch 10% smaller.
Oh, yes. In fact, it's funny you say that because there was a point in rewatching that show. I don't know if it was Craig Federini or maybe it was Phil Schell. I don't remember. But they kept talking about how there was no bezel, like it was completely seamless. And as they're doing it, you can see like this huge notch. And I was thinking to myself, they literally never acknowledge the notch in that presentation. They pretend it's not even there, and it will be very typical Apple one day in the future when they either do that or they literally are able to get rid of it somehow, where that stuff can just be embedded behind the screen, maybe, or it's just in the actual bezel, whatever it is, and that will be the day they acknowledge it. Either. Sorry, I'm getting construction work. If you can hear that, they'll either acknowledge it by reducing it, like you said, classic Apple, or by eliminating it, and then suddenly it will be the worst problem they ever had, and they solved it because they're geniuses.
Pretty much.
Yep.
That's about it. Or they'll look at the Essential phone, which only has a very tiny, because the camera is only there, but they don't have facial recognition. But if they gave us a fingerprint reader on the back, I'd be okay with that.
I couldn't agree more, and I am apparently a Luddite for wanting that.
Yeah, you are. You're a peasant stuck in the old ways, but you know what? I will join you on your farm and dig up your beets.
It's a happy farm. It's a nice place.
It's a happy farm unless you're the cow.
Yep. Well, cows have a great life, and then they have one really bad day. When you think about it.
Yeah, I guess people bring them food and all that good stuff. And then there was actually Bloomberg had a bunch of stuff out this week. I
Yep.
think it's mostly from Mark Gurman, actually. It says Microsoft, you wrote up, please pay attention to what Apple is doing with iOS. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I always think of this as finish the job. In fact, I know I'd written about this before, probably many times. So I Googled "finish the job Thurrott," and what came up was an article I wrote in 2012 where Steven Sinofsky had just been outed from Microsoft, and I was like, look, this is what they're going to do. They're going to update Windows on a rolling basis, no more big releases every 3 years, much needed because Windows 10 was a piece of crap. And two, they talk. I actually used the word creators in there twice, which is kind of amazing. It's
That's
just
embarrassing.
curiously, I know it's weird. Like, if it's worth reading this article. I hate linking to old stuff that I write because the company that bought my company is such an incredible piece of crap itself, and I hate linking to them. But this one is like curiously prescient, you know. But anyway, but as far as, and I'm terrible at that kind of stuff, but as far as finish the job goes, what I mean is at Microsoft, there's this culture of shipping new features, and the heroes at the company, the A-teamers, are the guys who ship new stuff, and that persists today. It's why you see stupid shit like 3D and Windows mixed reality and all this dumb stuff that's in Windows, and none of the fundamentals really getting fixed. We're still stuck with the same file explorer as a classic example, or the copy and paste bug in Windows 10 that never seems to go anywhere. There's no reward at Microsoft for fixing bugs, right? Now, they obviously fix bugs. People should, I assume someone will eventually point out that, Paul, they ship a cumulative update every month, and that's mostly about fixing bugs. And yes, but just as in the Service Pack days, the A-teamers move on to the next thing. They're always on the next version of Windows. They're always on the next big feature of Windows, whatever they perceive that to be at the time. And it doesn't give those things that they created a chance to become excellent. We have in Windows 10 today an app ecosystem where apps can and should be updated all the time, and that means they can get better all the time. And yet we recently had a complaint conversation about the basic inbox apps like Calendar and Mail and People and how terrible they are, and why is that so true 5 years or whatever it is now after they debuted in Windows 8. This is a company whose culture just basically prevents them from achieving quality. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's a problem. And iOS, the story that Mark Gurman has is that Apple's slowing down the acceleration of new features into iOS, and they're going to focus on quality because they've had some problems. And I think that's smart. And I thought it was smart 5 years ago. I probably thought it was smart 10 years ago. And I've been basically complaining to Microsoft that they need to do the same. And instead, they've accelerated the Windows development schedule from once every 3 years to now a major new release twice a year, double the rate at which Android and iOS are updated. It's crazy. So I'm just asking for the same thing I've always asked for, which is to slow the heck down and do the right thing and fix it.
Yeah, one of the things that was also, I believe, in that post was that Apple was going to slowly move away from, okay, if your code's not done, whatever, June 1st, make up a date, it's not shipping in the next update. We've already seen this a little bit where they're introducing features just kind of randomly throughout the year. And I think that's kind of what their marching orders are going forward. It's
Right.
not, if you don't hit this deadline, you're waiting a year to get it in the next release. It's like, okay, we can do this sometime, 6 months from now when it's ready, rather than,
Brad, it's amazing to me. I don't have the list off the top of my head, but I have to say, the past couple of times you've done this podcast, you've said something profound, like multiple times now. And you just said something that I think is important to the conversation with Windows, which is that, and I can't believe I'm complimenting you. It makes me feel a little,
don't worry,
little sick inside.
I'm ready.
But Windows is this giant, complex legacy software application, a software bundle. It's something that can't be upgraded as if it were a service. In fact, but yet that is exactly what they're doing. The thing that you just described, the ability to ship features when they're ready, can't happen with Windows because it's so huge, it's so convoluted, it's so non-modular that they can't do what you just described. So they have to set these dates. We're going to have a major release in March, and we're going to have a major release in September.
Mm-hmm.
We used to have a major release every 3 years. Whatever the schedule is. It's because Windows is so legacy that they can't do that. A modern system, a smaller system, a more elegant kind of mobile platform like iOS or Android can be updated that way. And Apple, Apple has shipped, and I don't know how long they've been doing this, maybe forever, new features into iOS out of stream with the major release, right? In other words, iOS 11 comes out in September. There are iOS 11 point updates throughout the year, and they actually do add new features, right? That's a saner approach.
Yep.
In fact, if you want to take the rolling update thing to its logical conclusion, I mean, forget the version updates. It would be nice if, Timeline can be ready in May. Well, ship it in May.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I think the whole thing is just screwed up. I don't think they can do it. But the problem is to ship Timeline, they actually have to ship a major new version of Windows.
Yep.
And that's everything you need to know right there.
Yep.
Also not in my article. It's a good point.
Well, we are going to savor that for just a minute here, folks. And we're done.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah. No, I think it's a more logical way to launch software at the end of the day. We're so accustomed to that legacy, okay, we get a new OS every 3 years. And Microsoft wanted to replicate that twice a year for God knows why. But I'll tell you what, we both know the value of having nice PR releases just sprinkled throughout the year. Yes, they can say, all right, there's a new build coming, iOS, what would be 11, coming in September. And then they'd say, you know what, January, here's another new feature just because we love you. And then they can just kind of just keep rolling with it. And then they can focus on maybe one large feature. I think it's a better way. It's pretty much what every other developer does who has just a standard app and not an operating system. And
I mean, John Carmack probably didn't invent this phrase, but the guy who used to run it, the genius behind all of their early games, once his phrase was always, "We'll ship this thing when it's ready." Exactly.
Yep.
Not we have to arbitrarily ship something in September because that's what we said we were going to do. And if these features we've been talking up for the past 6 months aren't ready, well, you won't see them until the next major release, which comes next year. It's a really I think it speaks to I think that explains Windows as a service not working, if not better than anything else, as good as anything else, as good as any other complaint you could make. It's a salient point.
Well, speaking of salient points, Paul, Microsoft is announcing today that Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection is coming to Windows 7. And now this sounds extremely odd. It's like, why are they building advanced threat protection features for Windows 7, which is going to expire in 2020? But the reason for it is actually kind of makes sense. So if you are in a hybrid shop or using hybrid poorly there, but you have Windows 7 and Windows 10 machines as you're in that upgrade process, you can't get that type of protection in your environment. And so then you have some machines protected by advanced threat protection, some protected by something else. And so now they're just kind of simplifying that and saying, look, if you're in that process, we'll let you protect everything that you run under this umbrella product. And that's realistically about it.
What a strange concept, supporting your supported products with security.
Yep.
Innovative.
Very, very, very much.
How much? What do you think the over/under is on Microsoft extending the support lifecycle for Windows 7?
So I'm going to qualify that statement. Publicly, probably not very much. Privately, I bet they do. They're going to have to. They're given. We all know how this story ends. It's a Windows XP all over again. People are going to wait until the last minute, and they're going to go, "Oh shit, Microsoft, please bail us out," and they'll say, "Pay us some money," and it'll happen.
Well, yeah. Once again, Red, you've done it. I think that's the key there, which is that with Windows XP, they extended the support lifecycle a couple of times. There were reasons for that. I mean, there's always reasons, but they did it kind of carte blanche. Like as a consumer, you were supported, really. I mean, meaning that they were releasing updates, security updates, et cetera. So I think this time around, the approach might be a little different, which is that you could almost write the Microsoft blog post, to accommodate our customers who are in fact moving to Windows 10. We know they are, but they're just not far enough along in the process. They will either extend the support lifecycle to some small amount of time, 6 months, 9 months, something like that, for free, or they will lower the cost of paying Microsoft to support the unsupportable. Like, in other words, they allow enterprises to do this today. If you have an out-of-support OS, you can pay them a lot of money to still get security updates as required. I bet they lower the price on that temporarily as well, just to and they always do it in the guise of easing the transition. We know our customers are moving. We know they're doing this, and we just want to make it. We want to do the right thing for them. Yada yada yada. But
Yep.
yeah, there's no way this doesn't happen.
Fully, in some capacity, it has to.
Yep.
Because there's going to be hospitals on Windows 7. That's the end of it, and we already know that
Or
because
governments.
Yeah. Yep.
How do you say no to these entities?
Yep. Especially when they've. Yep.
I don't think we can.
Quick show notes here, folks. Actually, I shouldn't have switched to that yet. There we go. That's the sponsored background. This is not a sponsored message. Quick show notes here. I've got to do some unplanned travel from basically tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. until whoops, that was not supposed to go to Paul.
Your story bores me, Brad. I'm yawning.
Paul's just missing. It wouldn't be the first time.
But please keep talking.
I've got to travel from 8:30 a.m. tomorrow until I'm assuming like 7 p.m. on Thursday. A lot of driving in a car, and because of that, I don't believe there's going to be a podcast unless Paul wants to record one in front of him, sitting in front of a webcam. But
you have no idea how much I want to do that.
Yes, I can't expect that that's going to happen. So this is going to be the only podcast. There will definitely be a live show on on Friday. If I get back somehow early on Thursday, we'll let you know, but just kind of keep in mind if you're looking for that, which is kind of why I'm hoping that the audio on this one actually worked. Otherwise, we're going to get a week-long string of things like, hey, Brad, did you know that yes, I know. Yes, trust me.
But you should just precede a post in the forums called audio problems on FRD. And just you might as well just let it happen.
Yeah, the crazy thing here, and I think I'm saying this now, but I haven't actually heard the video. What I've done on this episode is that I've actually gone into the volume mixer and hard limited Skype's input. I was trying to do other things where it would make more sense, give us better fidelity, but Skype doesn't want to pay attention to the other rule sets inside of Windows or inside of XSplit, which is what I was trying to do before. And so now I'm hard limiting its output.
I think it's guaranteed that we will get the feedback that today my podcast audio was awesome.
Yeah, or it was too low.
Yeah, but I'm using like a completely different headset, which I'm not going to use every day, and people will find this to be better in some way.
Yep. So, with that, folks, I will be away. I'm not offline, but I'm going to be sitting in. Actually, I think I'm riding with my sister-in-law and their kid and my wife in the car as well, in a van for multiple hours against my will.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes. So I will be online, but I'll be in the back of a van.
Jeez, like a kidnap victim.
Yeah, that sounded worse coming out than it actually is.
Right.
But folks, today's show is, as a reminder, is brought to you by Cloudberry Lab. Check them out, cloudberrylab.com/FRD for a free trial and learn how to back up your cloud and protect yourself from ransomware and all that other good stuff, or just be able to recover your files whenever the heck you need it. There you go. That does it for today, and we'll catch you back on Friday for a live show, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, threat.com/live, if you want to harass us about the audio quality while we're recording, because that is always a fun thing to do as well. We'll catch you right back here next time.